for the decade. All sectors are said to be performing well as per the economic survey. The GDP and the fastest growing drivers of GDP are going to be agricultural sector and services sector, both of which the survey says remain strong and consistently operating well above the trend levels. The manufacturing sector has also found its firm footing. The survey says it is now above the pre-pandemic trajectory, and the country's chief economic advisor says that if the government, to quote him, gets out of the way, it deregulates in a serious fashion, then manufacturing growth will go back to much higher than what it was in the pre-pandemic era. Despite these challenges, there are positive signs. Inflation management, like I said, it is thereabouts where the RBI wants it to be, just outside its comfort zone at 4.9%. Retail inflation has softened. It was above 5%, in fact, close to 5.5% almost in the financial year 23-24. It is down now to under 5%, so 4.9% for the April to December period of 24-25. The economic survey also did point out to the uncertainty in the global markets, but it did assure that there are strong macroeconomic fundamentals, there is a favorable business environment domestically, and there are high growth economic indicators which have kept the FPI flows net positive. Commercial banks have reported a consistent decline in their non-performing assets or NPAs as per the latest assessments. Insurance premiums have also gone up. The economic blueprint has highlighted that India's total exports have registered a steady growth in the first 9 months of the financial year 25, reaching a little over $600 billion. So, the Chief Economic Advisor, Dr. V. Ananthanageshwaran, said that the world is perhaps evolving much more rapidly than we realize. He also did have a cautionary tale for a good 10 pages in the economic survey. He said that the end of rapid world trade growth is clouding India's export growth outlook. The survey also talks about, without naming him directly, the Trump impact or the isolationist, almost protectionist tendencies that we are seeing not just in the United States, which is the largest economy in the world, but also in parts of Europe. The survey says, looking ahead, global policy changes could influence India's external trade. In fact, the words used by the economic survey are cloudy outlook for external trade. The evolving trade stand of a few major economies, the US of course being primary of that, will affect key Indian export sectors, whether it's chemicals, machinery, textiles, electronics, and of course, not to mention software exports. In the short term, diversifying export markets is essential. Maybe look east, maybe look to Southeast Asia, while at the same time, medium-term efforts should focus on increasing market share in the established Western markets, whether it is in Western Europe or even in the United States.
The changing global landscape and how India can raise the game for the new playing field. As you can see here, reform through deregulation, augmenting internal capacities for growth, the private sector's role in nation building, the energy transition the Indian way, and the growth outlook for FY26.
देश के हर गरीब एवं मध्यम वर्ग समुदाय पर मां लक्ष्मी की विशेष कृपा रहे।
मध्यम वर्ग जितने बड़े सपने देखेगा, देश उतने ही ऊंचा उड़ान भरेगा। मेरे सरकार ने मुक्त स्वर से मध्यम वर्ग के योगदान को न केवल स्वीकारा है, बल्कि हर मौके पर उसे सराहा भी है।
All right, so will Budget 2025 meet expectations? Full CII panel joining us On the show, Sanjeev Puri is President of CII and Chairman Managing Director at ITC. R. Mukundan, Vice President of CII and Managing Director and CEO of Tata Chemicals. Vrinda Kapoor is CEO of Third Eye Tech and member of CII National Council. Mr. Ganesh Raj, CMD of CII Core Group and Direct Tax and Tax Partner at Ernst & Young. And Deepak Shetty is CEO and MD of JCB. Mr. Puri, let me start with you first. Of course, the big headline number that stood out in the economic survey was growth rate, FY25 GDP at 6.4%. The projected outlook for FY26 is 6.3 to 6.8. This would be a 4-year low for the Indian economy. What does the finance minister need to do to revive from this 4-year low?
Okay, let me first of all start by saying that given the global context in which we are operating, the geoeconomics, the slower rate of growth, excess capacities in some parts of the world, which is, dumping stocks in India and other parts of the world. In that backdrop, the growth rates that we have got, even this year, 6.4, second half means 6.8, and the projections for next year, I think these are reasonably good. It shows that despite the global challenges, the economy is continuing to make progress. So I would say that's a positive, and it is so because the economy is actually on a good foundation because of a lot of steps that have been taken in the past. Now going forward, there are the next set of, I think, the reforms and actions that the CI is recommending that can unlock the potential and drive the growth rate further. Many of these have been alluded to in the survey. So let me call out some of the important ones. I think, for example, it's important to take the lessons of the revival in manufacturing in certain sectors like, the electronic sector, some other cutting-edge technology, and see how we can take those examples and revive and provide impetus to sectors that are labor-intensive, which are really to do with furniture, footwear, apparel, even tourism. And if we take a sectoral approach, look at what is required for each one of the sectors. For example, apparel and footwear will benefit from ease and cost of doing business. It will benefit from, flexibility in the labor regulations with the chief economic advisor. All of this was spoken about. It will benefit from FTAs. And these are enablers besides of, an appropriate PLI scheme. So like that, I think sectorally, some impetus needs to be provided to labor-intensive sectors.
Okay.
That's one. The second is that, and I think the economic survey again points this out, is on the potential for agriculture. And agriculture is the largest, the sector that has the largest percentage of workforce. And to provide impetus to the consumption cycle, farm incomes need to improve. And there are quite a lot of actions that the government has taken in the past, like infusion of technology, farmer collectives, and many more, irrigation. And all of these are also called out in the, the economic survey. So it's a question of how through public-private partnership can we accelerate this trend and provide further impetus to the agriculture sector, the rural economy.
Okay.
I think it's continuing thrust on public capex. I think the economic survey talks about 2 decades focused and continued investments in public and digital infrastructure. That is going to make the economy competitive. It will also create jobs and have its multiplier effect on the economy. And then I think also the focus on MSME. MSME is a very important component of the economy, large job creator in the economy. So how do we strengthen that sector? I think that's also been called out. And there too, CI has suggested, for example, there are many digital platforms for MSME sector. So how can we kind of create an integrated platform from an ease of doing perspective? And I think we had also recommended that the credit guarantee scheme, which has happened yesterday, and I think that will provide much needed relief to the MSME sector. And before I end, let me also say, okay, there are some facets of it that are not related to budget, but it's also related to the whole gamut of liquidity in the banking system, the interest rates, and at least on the liquidity, we're seeing action being taken. And hopefully we are expecting in February, the interest rate should also come down. So these are certainly going to help the economy. And also, given that the food inflation has been sticky, and it is important to provide some relief to the middle class people. So we are recommending some relief in the income tax. We're also recommending some reduction in excise on petroleum products and so on and so forth, to give more money in the
Okay.
hands of.
So let me go to Mr. Mukundan. Notwithstanding everything that Mr. Puri has said, of course, there are global headwinds. Some of the big Western economies are turning increasingly protectionist. So there are big headwinds for global trade, something that the economic survey alludes to. But having said that, for India to be growing at a modest 6.4%, when our aim should be going as close as possible to double digits and for a sustained period of time, as China did all through the 80s, 90s, and through much of the 2000s. The point is, we are nowhere close to getting that kind of growth rate. And the point that Mr. Puri made, services sector is pretty much now up at the pre-pandemic levels, but it's manufacturing that seems to be a laggard. Why is that, and what can the government do to fix that?
Thank you, Zaka. I think very clearly one of the key highlights is how do we kickstart or make sure manufacturing moves at a much faster pace. And for that, I think the economic survey itself highlights several factors. One, it talks about how do we improve the ease of doing business and cost of doing business. And then it talks about augmenting internal capacities for growth, manufacturing growth. That is creating land banks, making sure that you do the stuff at the state level. Some successful states have done. For example, they've created industrial parks in rural areas. They've actually created housing colonies there for workers to stay, so that the skilled workers stay back. And then they've created outreach programs to industry, as well as they've printed publicity material to go speak in foreign languages to attract foreign investment in their sector. So the states like Tamil Nadu have done well, and it's part of what economic survey has done. And our recommendation to government is exactly the same. I think we need to double down on our effort to move forward towards a more sustainable economy in terms of focus on sustainability. At the same time, we have to focus on continuing the pathway for ease of doing business and cost of doing business. A lot of the effort now has to be done at the state level. So we are saying that center must now facilitate the states, encourage the states to move in the right direction, and make sure that we create these pockets and engines of growth. The other thing we are also saying is that there is a tremendous opportunity. While we may have attracted something close to 20, around that percentage of the capital which was initially going towards China. It's an opportunity. The reconfiguration of global supply chain is an opportunity. And what Sanjeev already alluded to, electronic sector is a classic case in point. In fact, today, if you take out the petroleum sector and the service sector, the fastest growing sector in terms of exports is the electronic sector. And that has single-handedly happened because of the outreach which was made to being part of the global value chain. I think few of the large companies came in here, set up a value chain here, and now they're also value adding. Initially, they started with 15% value add. Their target is to go to 30-35%. They've created tremendous employment along with it. And I think we have to replicate these success stories. So really, while it's a challenging environment, but it's also an environment full of opportunities. And I think India is well placed to capitalize on it. And we need to create factors. We have all the factors of capitalizing on it. We need to keep moving ahead in the right direction as we've done so far.
माननीय सदस्य, संसद की इस बैठक को संबोधित करते हुए मुझे हार्दिक प्रसन्नता हो रही है। अभी 2 माह पहले हमने संविधान को अपनाने की 75वीं वर्षगांठ मनाए हैं और कुछ दिन पहले ही भारतीय गणतंत्र ने 75 वर्षों की यात्रा भी पूरी की है। ये अवसर लोकतंत्र की जननी के रूप में भारत के गौरव को नई ऊंचाई देगा। मैं सभी देशवासियों की तरफ से बाबा साहेब आम्बेडकर समेत सभी संविधान निर्माताओं को नमन करती हूँ। माननीय सदस्यगण, इस समय देश में महाकुंभ का ऐतिहासिक पर्व भी चल रहा है। महाकुंभ भारत की सांस्कृतिक परंपरा का, भारत की सामाजिक चेतना का पर्व है। देश और दुनिया से आए करोड़ों श्रद्धालु प्रयागराज में पूर्ण स्नान कर चुके हैं। मैं मनो अमावस्या के दिन हुई हादसे पर अपना दुख व्यक्त करती हूँ। घायलों के शीघ्र स्वस्थ होने की कामना करती हूँ। कुछ दिन पहले ही हमने देश के पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह जी को खोए हैं। मनमोहन सिंह जी ने 10 वर्ष तक प्रधानमंत्री के रूप में देश की सेवा की। वे लंबे समय तक संसद के सदस्य भी रहे। मैं मनमोहन सिंह जी को भावभीनी श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित करती हूँ। माननीय सदस्यगण, भारत की विकास यात्रा की इस अमृतकाल को आज मेरी सरकार अभूतपूर्व उपलब्धियों के माध्यम से नई ऊर्जा दे रही है। तीसरे कार्यकाल में 3 गुना तेज गति से काम हो रहा है। आज देश बड़े निर्णयों और नीतियों को असाधारण गति से लागू होते देख रहा है और इन निर्णयों में देश की गरीब, मध्यम वर्ग, युवा, महिलाओं, किसानों को सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता मिली। मेरी सरकार ने तीसरे कार्यकाल में सभी के लिए आवास के उद्देश्य की पूर्ति के लिए ठोस कदम उठाए हैं। प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना का विस्तार करते हुए
I think a good example of the China plus one or the move away from the China supply chain strategy, a good example of that would be the manufacturing of the iPhone. Today, I'm told close to 15% of all global iPhone manufacturing is happening in India. But that may be the headline picture. I want to go to Mr. Deepak Shetty because, you know, one of the areas which, again, the survey has flagged, and I think one of the panelists earlier mentioned this as well, while some of the big ticket Fortune 500, Sensex 30 companies are growing pretty steadily, the MSMEs are finding it difficult. In fact, the survey says MSME credit growth is lagging at 8.2%. Yes, we're still, reeling from the after effects of what happened 4 years ago with COVID. There were the PLI schemes, there were other incentives that were launched. But why is it that MSMEs are not feeling like they've returned to the pre-pandemic era?
I think the one good thing with the survey has done is that it has put the light on this particular sector. And for the growth in manufacturing sector that India is aspiring for, if we want to reach those targets, certainly the MSME sector has to play a big role. And not only on that point, I think the global geopolitical situation, the way it is changing, the way the manufacturing center of gravity is going to move away probably more towards America. I think India has a fantastic opportunity to become the supply chain partner for the world. And in this, the manufacturing sector is going to play a very important role. I'll go back to what Mukundan alluded to. I think one of the biggest challenges the manufacturing MSME sector, particularly when we connect very closely with our supplier partners face, is on the ease of doing business. And the economic survey has rightly put the spotlight on this aspect, whether it is the handling of the land issues with the land authority, or various other, whether it is the liquidity in the system, how easy it is for them to get loans. These are the companies which will sort of drive the growth in the manufacturing sector. We have seen, you alluded to China, we have seen what has happened in China. They have created those rural industrial parks. They have created that whole ecosystem where a small entrepreneur in the manufacturing sector can flourish. I think that is what we need to do. The last point I will make is, even today, the logistics cost is a big deterrent. There's a double-digit logistic cost that we see, and the MSME sector struggles on it. And I think again, economic survey is talking about it, that how we ease the burden, whether and CI also has been making suggestions in this regard, that whether it is cost of the power or fuel, I'm sure all of this will help the MSME sector to grow, particularly in the manufacturing side.
Okay, I want to shift focus to another area which again the survey does mention as potential headwinds, particularly when it comes to external trade. And one of that, of course, is this move towards protectionist tendencies in Western markets, particularly the United States and some economies in Europe as well. I want to ask Vrinda Kapoor this. The survey doesn't mention Donald Trump or his potential to put tariffs, and he's been threatening tariffs on, Canada, Mexico, China. He's even threatening tariffs on BRICS countries. India is part of BRICS. He may not make good on many of these threats, but the point is that this definitive move towards a degree of protectionism that we're seeing in the world's largest economy, particularly when it comes to software exports, and also this whole debate and narrative and this sort of enforced strictness when it comes to migration, whether it is, clamping down on temporary work visas, so on and so forth. How much of a concern is that as far as the near-term outlook is concerned?
So I think, I think that there will always be a concern regarding geopolitical issues, and I think that this is not a U.S. issue. This is, I think, this is global right now. So we are going to continue to see issues with, regulation, deregulation, supply chain constraints, access to market. Right? But the advantage that we have as Indian industry is access to a very large market of our own, which we are giving away to other people because we're not capitalizing on those opportunities. Just as an example, the amount of money we spend on imported SaaS products, right? The amount of technology that gets consumed in this country in terms of licensed products. I think the what would be more imperative to see from the budget is things like the operationalization of the National Deep Tech Research Fund, right? We heard of an amount of 1 lakh crore rupees being delegated towards strengthening national research. And I think, that's something that could be seen as a very positive move for the industry. More than anything, I think right now, what we need to see is a focus from the government on pushing industry into making bold moves. When it comes to software, when it comes to all of those things, we have all of the talent in this country, right? We just don't have the right ecosystem in place to go out and make those bold moves. We're looking at an era where there is a generational transformation in probably every single sector and every single industry. So I think the question for us is, can we see the government create enough incentives in this budget where it pushes industry into making those bold moves? And within CII, those have been very important conversations over the last couple of months. How do we ensure that, from the geopolitical risk profiling of everything that is going on right now? The second is, how do we build up national resilience and what role the government has to play in helping industry build up this national resilience?
No, I want to specifically also ask you about, and the survey goes into some exhaustive detail about the challenge of artificial intelligence. This is coming on the same week as this Chinese AI app, DeepSeek, seems to have upended the tech world. The survey says that AI is anticipated to surpass human performance. It can result in large-scale labor displacement particularly for middle and low-wage workers. Adverse effects of AI adoption are not far-fetched, introducing AI with sensitivity to India's needs. Many people are asking, especially after this week's news about the Chinese AI app DeepSeek, where are we in this AI race? Yes, I know the minister announced a few days ago that we're going to invest 10,000 crores. It's the National AI Fund, and we're going to import GPUs, and there are some companies that have been identified for it. What should we do for India to invent its own DeepSeek?
Right, that's what I was trying to allude to, right? I think the operationalization of the mission mode projects that Government of India has put out in the last couple of years, the semiconductor mission, the AI mission, the quantum mission, that's one part of it. Focusing on next generation R&D is a really important part of it, right? We fail to see when we look at the surface how far these routes go back in both China and the US, right? How many years of and millions of dollars have gotten poured into reaching a stage where OpenAI becomes a reality or where the DeepSeek model becomes a reality. And I think that there is a calibrated need that we need to have in terms of a whole of nation approach, where how far back in this entire process we are, how much the investment that needs to go in, what our advantages and disadvantages are as a country, and how we need to move forward. And I would say that in this, I think risk mitigation needs to be thrown out the window. We need to take as a country more aggressive stance, so both from the government but also from industry.
All right, I'll give Mr. Mugundan the final word. I'll take off from what Mr. Puri was saying. Interest rates, is that where the concern is? Is that why we're not seeing the kind of credit uptick? For example, MSMEs, I think I said this earlier as well, MSME credit growth is lagging at 8.2%. One area where the government, the RBI, the banking system seems to have done very well, particularly in the last decade or so, is cleaning up the books, is gross NPAs. It's come down substantially for the April to December half that we're seeing. But the point is, why then are we not seeing the kind of credit uptick that is required for an 8% plus growth?
Yeah, so Zaka, I think the key issue really is that the interest rate issue which you highlight is for the middle class, it's really an issue because they pay EMIs. Those EMIs have eaten into their savings. So I think let's leave that piece aside. I think that's got to get fixed. And one approach to fixing it is what Mr. Ganesh has already highlighted. Put a little bit more money into the segment of the class, and it's going to lead to a little bit of erosion in revenue collection, but it'll pay off much better in terms of consumption demand. As far as industry is concerned, industry starts to reinvest and bring out their animal spirits when utilization rates go to about 80%, 70% or 80%.
It's those final two pieces, isn't it? Land and labor, which has been stuck for some time now. But let's see what the finance minister can do within the limited elbow room that she has to try and wiggle her way through, one, slowing growth, B, at the same time trying to put a little more money in the hands of the people.
माननीय सदस्यों, संसद की इस बैठक को संबोधित करते हुए मुझे हार्दिक प्रसन्नता हो रही है। अभी 2 माह पहले हमने संविधान को अपनाने की 75वीं वर्षगांठ मनाए हैं और कुछ दिन पहले ही भारतीय गणतंत्र ने 75 वर्षों की यात्रा भी पूरी की है। ये अवसर लोकतंत्र की जननी के रूप में भारत के गौरव को नई ऊंचाई देगा। मैं सभी देशवासियों की तरफ से बाबा साहेब आम्बेडकर समेत सभी संविधान निर्माताओं को नमन करती हूँ। माननीय सदस्यगण, इस समय देश में महाकुंभ का ऐतिहासिक पर्व भी चल रहा है। महाकुंभ भारत की सांस्कृतिक परंपरा का, भारत की सामाजिक चेतना का पर्व है। देश और दुनिया से आए करोड़ों श्रद्धालुओं प्रयागराज में पूर्ण स्नान कर चुके हैं। मैं मोनो अमावस्या के दिन हुई हादसे पर अपना दुख व्यक्त करती हूँ। घायलों के शीघ्र स्वस्थ होने की कामना करती हूँ। कुछ दिन पहले ही हमने देश के पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री डॉक्टर मनमोहन सिंह जी को खोए हैं। मनमोहन सिंह जी ने 10 वर्ष तक प्रधानमंत्री के रूप में देश की सेवा की। वे लंबे समय तक संसद के सदस्य भी रहे। मैं मनमोहन सिंह जी को भावभीनी श्रद्धांजलि अर्पित करती हूँ। माननीय सदस्यगण, भारत की विकास यात्रा की इस अमृतकाल को आज मेरी सरकार अभूतपूर्व उपलब्धियों के माध्यम से नई ऊर्जा दे रही है। तीसरे कार्यकाल में 3 गुना तेज गति से काम हो रहा है। आज देश बड़े निर्णयों और नीतियों को असाधारण गति से लागू होते देख रहा है और इन निर्णयों में देश की गरीब, मध्यम वर्ग, युवा, महिलाओं, किसानों को सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता मिली। मेरी सरकार ने तीसरे कार्यकाल में सभी के लिए आवास के उद्देश्य की पूर्ति के लिए ठोस कदम उठाए हैं। प्रधानमंत्री आवास योजना का विस्तार करते हुए 3 करोड़ अतिरिक्त परिवारों को नए घर देने का निर्णय लिया गया है। इसके लिए 5,36,000 करोड़ रुपया खर्च किए जाने की योजना है। मेरी सरकार गांव में गरीबों की उनकी आवासीय भूमि का हक देने और वित्तीय समावेशन के लिए प्रतिबद्ध है। इस दिशा में स्वामित्व योजना के अंतर्गत अब तक 2 करोड़ 25 लाख स्वामित्व कार्ड जारी किए गए। इनमें से करीब 70 लाख स्वामित्व कार्ड पिछले 6 महीने से जारी किए। पीएम किसान सम्मान निधि के तहत करोड़ों किसानों को पिछले महीने में 41,000 करोड़ रुपया की राशि का भुगतान हुआ है। जनजातीय समाज के 5 करोड़ लोगों के लिए धरती आबा जनजातीय ग्राम उत्कर्ष अभियान प्रारंभ हुआ है। इसके लिए 80,000 करोड़ रुपये का प्रावधान किया गया है।
Well, that was Philadelphia's Mayor Sherelle Parker not giving any